this video, I'm going to show you how, before it goes live, etc. These all make up your. So this is.
Oh, you can. Can you hear me, though, too? So you can see, can you hear me? Yes, you can. Okay. That's super weird. Because it doesn't show up on friggin' YouTube. Okay, so that's over there. Okay, now I just have to get the URL. Well, that's not what I meant to do. Okay. I wonder if it will tell me. How many people are in here? Okay. Hopefully. I don't think anyone else is here yet. Hey. I have no idea how many people. Okay. Oh, and that's going through my speakers. I don't like that. Where can I see how many people are here? I think you just can type. Okay. That's my wife. I'm not sure that you've ever met her. Her name's Lillian. Can you guys see how many people are online? Like how many people are in the chat? And let me know if it's too quiet too. Okay, cool. Try to get stuff out of the way so I can actually see things. And I still don't know how to tell how many people are in the chat, which is super creepy. Okay. So I could just Google it. Live viewers 1. Whatever. Hi, how is everybody? Hey! Nabe. See, now I have to do that thing where, like, the awkward, I don't know how to pronounce your... Nabiler. Nabler? Hi there, hello. I don't know why I have these headphones on. I actually can't hear anything. So... ran into a bit of a struggle. I have to post this URL a few more places really quick. And then I will be more engaged. Awesome. See, and I don't know where the hell to see that. Yeah, it's super weird, but whatever. Cool. Well, whatever. I'll just tell you all to occasionally tell me how many people are around. That'll be great. So as soon as I can post this into the community channel real quick, sorry for my keyboard clickety-clack. It's a mechanical keyboard. hopefully that URL works. But maybe it doesn't. So can you guys see the chat? Like you can see each other talking, right? That is a great question. So that Oxford, I'm gonna link the guy who posted that real quick. His name is Jeremy Howick. I'm gonna pull up his Wikipedia page real quick. Get this cord out of my way. So thanks y'all for coming, first of all, too. I've never done this before, so it's a little odd. Probably more for me than you, so I'll try not to talk about it too much. And okay, so now where do I post to talk back in chat? Okay. So that's Jeremy Howick. He is the director of a kind of a history of medicine and philosophy of medicine. He's a philosophy prof at Oxford. And we got into a discussion very early on in the research I was doing for the Mr. Right episode. And he was talking about, there's a place in France. There it is. Friggin' spider on my microphone. Gross. Called, I'm going to mess up the name, so I'm going to look up the place in France where the people go to get their legs fixed. Place in French with the crutches. Lourdes. The Grotto of Our Lady of Lourdes. So that's a famous kind of faith healing site. And he said to me very early on, you can't explain all the crutches. You can go to Lourdes and see all these piles of crutches and you can't explain that. And I was like, I bet you can. But I didn't want to, jump on him too bad because I didn't know this guy. And we had a bit more of a back and forth. And one of the things that I noticed talking to medical professionals early on in the conversations about the Mr. Right episode is that they kept saying things like, we're not sure how this happened or if it was a mistake or, if the story of Mr. Right and his cancer was misdiagnosed or blah, blah, blah. Basically, the story is true. We just can't really explain why it happened. And my take of, well, it didn't happen, didn't seem to be a path that anyone had explored, which I found insane, but also, an opportunity. So it took a while to clarify with Dr. Howick what I was on about. Like, no, bud, I'm not saying that this was messed up or a mistranslation or somebody, misquoted this or something, but no, it just didn't happen. It's made up from whole cloth. And so, about 2 months later, or 6 weeks later or so, I got the video finished and sent it to him. And I got back a message that said, you make a convincing argument. Like, well, that's a nice little pat on the head from the Oxford professor. But then a week later, he said, I just cited you in my book. So I have bothered him to let me know when that book's going to come out. Let's try to make more eye contact. I'm used to having my teleprompter up there, so I actually look like I'm looking at you all, not like staring at my keyboard. Anyway, I don't know when it's going to come out. I assume Q1 or Q2 next year. But as far as I know, he's still in the manuscript stage. So what'll happen is, I don't know if you've done much in the way of book publishing, but you write the manuscript, you send it to the publisher, they'll have an opportunity to do edits, and then depending on what kind of book it is, they will position the release for when they think it'll sell best. I'm not sure if that's true with university presses. Maybe Mr. Cox in here can talk more about that. But he, I think, is still finishing the manuscript. So it might be as long as the end of next year, too. I'm not totally sure. But it's exciting. And he might just be saying nice things to me. I'm not sure if he's citing me as a better question. He does know my name. So we'll see. But that is cool. So thanks for asking that. Anybody else have any questions right off the bat? I don't know. See, and that's the thing. He said I cited you in my book, and he might have. It could very well be that page in the book says, and then this jagoff has some opinions that he's not qualified to make online. It could be. He could just be saying, this is why you don't talk to dilettantes who try to look up history on the internet. I have had very nice discussions with Dr. Howick, so I don't think that's the case. But you never know. He gave me no indication about whether or not he was citing it in a complimentary way, citing it in a neutral way, or basically telling me to shut up. But I don't get the impression that it's the last one of those. If it is, I'll find that funny. Whatever. I'll frame it on my wall. This Oxford prof thinks I'm full of crap, and that'll be fine. Try to stir my coffee away from the microphone. So, how many of you are there now? I wish I could tell. I can create a poll. That's all. That's dumb. Yeah, feel free to jump in with questions. If not, I had planned to talk a bit more about the Dr. West episode. I'm going to do run around the world here and see if I can drum up any stragglers who might want to show up to this thing. So I was going to talk a bit about, what's this saying? He could be. I don't see. So one of the things that I've noticed with Nabil, Nabiler, is it Nabiler? Is the E long or not? Is it Nabil or Nabil? I don't want to, should probably just not worry about mispronouncing names. But in response to that, to your request there for more content, what I've ended up doing is doing most of the content for YouTube and then cutting them into smaller pieces for TikTok. I haven't really done it the other way around, where I made content for TikTok and then posted it on YouTube. It's funny, I did make some YouTube shorts for a second and immediately lost 9 subscribers, which I took as a pretty gentle, like, maybe don't do that. I would like to be making more content too, and will be soon. The massive break that I've had in the last, 6 months, I basically did every life thing that can possibly happen. We moved, we got a new house, I got married, I graduated, I'm applying for a new school, or to continue my education at a new university, possibly unsuccessfully. And so things have been kind of crazy, but log E like B, Nabil, yeah. And so that's really slowed me down. Trying to house shop in this incredibly ridiculous environment, or market, getting everything moved, took a lot of time, and I don't want to be making excuses. This is what I really want to do. I love doing this. I love this opportunity to talk to new people, like you, and returning friends, and have these interactions. I love investigating content. So this is what I want to do, and I do want to focus more on this. We have the studio now. I wish I could find some photos of my old setup. I'm wearing these. It was literally a 550 square foot apartment, and like a corner of it that you could see on the videos was clean, because the rest of it was just filled to the gills with, boxes. We had 2 people stuff in there from the pandemic, and there was like a table and a section of couch and like a little a side table thing, and that was all you could see on the camera. And that was my shot, and it was in the living room, and a 3rd story walk up with neighbors who were loud near an overpass that was loud near downtown with crazy people who were loud. So this is a hell of an improvement, and I'm lucky and excited to utilize this space and the new equipment that I have to make more content more regularly. So the other thing that takes more time is the higher production value. I'm kind of curious about that. That Mr. Right video, I don't know if y'all have seen it. And one aloe, my poor aloe plant. That thing needs to be repotted so bad. Alvin, the answer's aloe. The higher production value, I try to teach myself something else every video. And the last one was really doing music. And I haven't quite learned how to use the first 4 bars of music to set a mood and then have it fade out, so that I can just ignore it. No, if I was going to use music, by God, I was going to use the whole song and set everything I was doing to music, which took forever. So I need to either get better at that or find a happy medium. Cat pal. I need to find a happy medium between throughput and level of production, because that video was really fun to do, and I think it looked beautiful, if I do say so myself. But it took 4 times longer than it typically does. But we'll get there. So I really do want to make more content, and the Worst Questions episodes do kind of allow me, I think I've used them as an avenue to be a little more casual. Ironically, this last episode on what happened to Dr. West is outperforming the Mr. Right episode that it's based on. So go figure. I'm still new at all this. But we can continue to just chat, and I can answer questions and talk to y'all. I can talk a little bit about the crazier side of tracking down Dr. West if you want as well. Whatever y'all want to do. And by y'all, whoever types first, I suppose, gets to say. I did forget to respond to Daniel there. one of the things I've noticed in publishing about the Mr. Right story is that it's a set piece. So if you want to talk about the placebo effect and how powerful it is, you reference the Mr. Right story and use it as legitimacy. This was published in a medical journal, and therefore it's true. and whatever point you're trying to make, you just use that as a prop. I haven't seen many people really investigate it at all. And I would be surprised if Jeremy Howick goes into more detail and finds something I missed. I would love that. At some point, I'm going to screw up. One of the reasons that I do so much research is that I am terrified of being wrong. Because I think it takes a long time to build trust. And if I'm going to say that this is something that's true and put it in public, I want it to be true and I want it to be verifiable. And if I have somebody say, well, how do you know? I want to be able to show them. And at some point I'm going to screw that up. I'm going to be wrong about something. And so I fully plan to embrace that when it happens. I'm not sure that's going to happen in this case. I don't know what he would uncover. To the point where I talk to everyone at UCLA that you can talk to that's answering the phone right now to talk about this stuff. But I would welcome that. If he finds a piece of that story that I don't have, that would be wonderful. As far as Dr. West goes, what a weirdo. I did not intend to, I completely just stumbled into that story. He's like this plucky little Canadian guy who, as far as I can tell, I think so too. Yeah. Nabil, yeah, absolutely. And I think that, it can be a gate for the people you want to keep around. They'll come through that gate with you. Oh, by the way, Dan, if you want to link that, your podcast or webpage, feel free. Mr. D.R. Cox here runs a podcast called Breaking Bad Science, and he's the gentleman who did the interview with me about the vaccines, the coronavirus vaccines that came out, gosh, more than a year ago now. Yeah, I agree. In one of the things that I've noticed in doing research on research, which has been horrifying, is that nobody knows what the hell they're talking about. And as long as you can have a citation and the citation is in a somewhat respectable place, that's you're done checking. It's all kind of the way that we've constructed medical research certainly allows us to be efficient in some ways. Speaking of trust, because you're looking up something and you're standing on the shoulders of giants all the time. You're going to try to push the knowledge into this small new area, and to do that you're going to say, okay, assuming all of this, and here's all my citations. But one of the things that happens with that, especially with the pressure to publish novel things, is this idea of, I have a controversial or an interesting topic, and I'm going to go in with the idea of what's happening and see if I can prove it, which is, kind of how hypotheses work. But you really want to kind of learn, see what happens and not be attached to the results. And so they want to say, starting here, or we already know, we're given this premise, and my premise is sound based on all these citations, and they don't really look at them more than that. And so the stuff with placebos is based on such shaky ground, just generally, that I think it's really created a problem, a way that we talk about the placebo effect, which is real, kind of, in that it's expectation, it's social pressure, it's classical conditioning, and a bunch of systems that we have that we can affect internally, especially with pain and mental health, and some things like that. But all we've done is we've drawn out the whole, I'm going to give you a sugar pill in place of this medication to test the difference for clinical trials. But we're not doing things like making sure that the same person is giving the same pill in the same mood to the different people in that trial. And that can affect things that we call the placebo effect just as much as taking a sugar pill. And so we really need to be doing a better job isolating this stuff and how we talk about it. And it's given rise to that a whole scam generation too, that I talk about in the Mr. Right video. It's added legitimacy to that idea of you can believe yourself well through some pretty serious and life-threatening medical conditions, and that's just not true. But anyway, the Mr. Right, that poor guy, there are things about him that I don't know. And it could very well be that, that's funny, actually, I bleep my stuff in my videos, but I swear a lot, so I'll try to keep a tab on it. But it could be that the guy is just a complete douche canoe. And that's why no one talks about him. It could be. He might be just a spiteful, nasty little dude. And I don't know enough about his personality. There's some things that in write-ups that talk about him as being a pretty jovial and nice person. What I've used to kind of get a picture of who this guy was is I had planned to be able to pull up some stuff and show you things. So in this live stream, is this... Let me see if this works. Was I really just in the corner of the live stream the whole time? Because I don't know what I'm doing. Is that how this has been going? Balls. Okay. Well, shoot. I don't really want to mess with it right now, but I had planned to be able to pull graphics over into this thing, and I'm not quite sure how to do that. But I got a camera on Black Friday, and this will be a lot easier in the future. But anyway, the things that I've been using to assume, to make assumptions about the personality of Dr. West are some of so that study he did of with Blumberg and Frank Ellis. It wasn't on purpose. No, I love that you assumed that. I really appreciate that. No, I have no idea what I'm doing. This is the first time for this, so thanks for being here, everybody. We can make it really big, and you can see my wrinkles. So, at the beginning of that research paper, you couldn't see the chat on stream. Oh, well, so how do I make that a thing? Isn't it just on the side of the live stream page? I mean, I've watched live stream stuff before. Like, isn't it running kind of alongside the viewing window? Gosh, I hope so. So you guys can't see when you type to me. Is that what's happening now? I really hope not. Anyway, trying to complete this thought. There's a line in the study that was released about the psychological connection between fast and slow cancer growth. And it said that study that was released about the psychological connection between fast and slow cancer. Well, how are you seeing this? And it said that. Oh, so some people do it on their thing. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna mute it, but. Fast and slow. Well, how are you seeing it? Yes. Sorry. She brought me the thing, a phone that had the live stream on it. Will you grab that fan out of here too? Thanks, sir. So, back to that. I now know how much of a delay there is too. That study had a line that said, look, when we talk to the patients that come in here, we tell them what we're doing. We are completely upfront about this, and we don't do these personality interviews at times when they're not well. It's only when the cancer has gone into some form of remission, temporary remission, because that's how cancer is, that we conduct these interviews and we talk to them. And so this was at a time where 72% of doctors would not tell a patient if they had cancer. They would just straight up not let their patients know that this was the diagnosis they had, because they didn't want to distress them, which is insane. So that level of disclosure that, hey, this is what we're doing, hey, here are your chances, and this is the kind of research that we're trying to do, was a lot of disclosure from a doctor at the time, from a doctor in that kind of research, and for that kind of research project. I don't know whose idea that was. I don't know if that was Eugene Blumberg's idea or Frank Ellis's idea or Dr. West's idea. His Nocturne, appreciate you. Bring friends. But you alone are enough. I appreciate y'all. Then to have Bruno Klopfer turn around and say that this is the same person who would, for no real reason, lie to his patient about injecting him with distilled water to produce this placebo effect cure, that's just so out of character for Dr. West. Also, his willingness to work with, there was a woman named Jessamine Hilliard who was denied access to the medical school at UCLA because she was a woman in the late 40s, and Dr. West kind of snatched her up and gave her position as his lab assistant until she was finally accepted to a PhD program and got her PhD in 1957 through UCLA. And that's his last publication, was Jessamine Hilliard's PhD thesis. And working with homosexuals at a time when that was, people were being prosecuted next to him at UCLA. So I'm making a lot of assumptions about who he was as a person, but he seems very empathetic and thoughtful and not too concerned with a lot of the prejudices of the day. And then to have that person act in a way that is described in the story that Bruno Klopfer tells about Mr. Wright just doesn't seem to fit. I would love to talk about Bruno Klopfer a little bit, because I really dislike that guy and have been trying not to be vicious on the videos. But fuck that guy. I think Bruno Klopfer is just about as damaging or destructive as an individual as the scam artists that operate now using the story that he created. As a brief recap, Bruno Klopfer is the guy who came over from Germany, around World War II, brought some of the Rorschach cards with him and became kind of the guy for the Rorschach test in the United States, and is the reason that we used it from the 50s through the 80s and even now, for everything from like job interviews to child custody cases. It's also huge in Japan, which I find is really weird. But it's all based on nothing. Now, that said, I don't think the Rorschach is useless. It actually did a really good job diagnosing schizophrenia, which is what it was for initially. And when I said I think it's about as useful as a tarot card reading, I didn't mean that in a completely dismissive way, because I think if you were an interview psychologist talking to a patient and did a tarot card reading, that would be useful. You know, I think you would learn a lot about your patient through that kind of interaction. But as far as what it claims to be able to do, in that it claims to be able to tell you things about a person that they don't want to reveal to you and allow you to diagnose things that they want to keep secret. No, absolutely not. Other researchers past Bruno Klopfer have kind of turned it into something else that is more useful, but it wasn't. And he claimed he could do everything with it. He claimed he could diagnose cancer, whether it would be fast or slow growing, that he could tell if you were a psychopath or gay or lazy or a bunch of other things. And it was just complete nonsense. He also didn't do a lot of research on his own. He's also partnered with a woman who actually ended up developing the attachment theory. I forget her name at the moment. But the story that she tells is that she was going to write this book and do a bunch of research on attachment theory. So she called up Bruno Klopfer. And Bruno Klopfer's line was, "Oh, I've been working on a book about that too. We should write it together." So what he did was he just had her write this book, and he stuck his name on it. And that happens a lot. In fact, let me see if I can find this book. This is the book of the symposium on the research for the psychological connection to cancer. And this guy right here, Frank Kirchner, he wrote a book about the Rorschach test with Bruno Klopfer, co-authored it, and was a member of his society. And so he edited this book, the symposium, from the research, which is probably why it talks so much about the Rorschach test and almost not at all about the MMPI, which is the study or the test that study actually used. So he was kind of a charming little social climber who really didn't have any good ideas of his own. And he was openly had open contempt for strict, objective, scientific guidelines and statistical research methods. He wanted everything to be interpretable and to kind of go through his absolutely. The one thing that the one thing that I noticed that Bruno Klopfer was really good at, and it's a pity that he used it for what he did, he was an institution builder. He was charming and apparently very kind, but a lot of con men are. And he built the Rorschach Research Exchange, which became the Journal for Projective Techniques, which became the Journal of Psychological Testing or something. I can't remember what it is now. It's still in print. It is a very well-respected journal today. And then he started the Society for Projective Techniques that is still around today as well, that grew out of study or workshops he was giving at Columbia about how to read the Rorschach. So he built these amazing institutions and didn't really contribute to them much besides trying to make them very relevant. But some of that relevance was very destructive. If you answered a stupid, what does this picture look like to you, incorrectly, because you were having a bad day or something, like, you could have your kids taken away from you in the 70s, which is just nuts. And it's just because this guy wanted to stay relevant and have a job and be important. I can look it up real quick. I gotta remember what it's actually called now. Journal of Personality Assessment is what it's called now. 2.83 in 2018. I can't remember what that scale is out of. And I'm sure you know and can tell me. Let's see what Nature's is. $15. Okay. Yeah, so maybe not as high as I thought it was, but I don't know how high, what the competition in the psychological space is. But it's, it's cited a lot. So anyway, one of the things I find funny about, it depends on why you have the ambition, I suppose. I guess we think of ambition as usually being self-serving. And I think, let's take Elon Musk, for example. That's a good idea. So, obviously an ambitious guy. And there's a reason that Elon Musk is kind of some people's heroes and some people's villains. He's certainly self-serving, but he's doing things that as they benefit him, they benefit a lot of other people as well. But Bruno, I don't have any indication that what Bruno was doing was ever, and you never really want to assume people's motives. It's a really bad idea. But I can't look at any action that Klopfer took that I can't find some sort of ulterior motive that was strictly self-serving. I don't see him sacrificing things that he really wanted or taking on a negative impact to him for the good of someone else, ever. And most of the time, the negative things that came out of what he was doing were not immediate, but he never even stopped to think about them. Right, in psychology specifically. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to have somebody, so Jack, somebody who is that public facing, oh God, talk about heroes. You use the term hero there. One of my heroes used to be Orson Scott Card. I don't know if y'all know who that is. He wrote about 4 books that are sitting over there, including that one, which is Ender's Game. And then I heard him on the radio one time. Yeah, and he was more of a take credit. And people used Bruno Klopfer's name to, benefit themselves as well. But a lot of the time, and this happens in academics all the time, it's actually called I think it's the 80-20 rule. Once you get to a certain place, or 20-80, 20% of the academics are getting 80% of the citations, and this is why those PhD things you work under the pressure of your senior academics. And that's why I found this book so interesting, is because the psychological staff at UCLA, Kirchner and Klopfer, and the other guy on here is Genjarelli. The two guys who edited this book, Genjarelli and Kirchner, were both members of Bruno Klopfer's society. And actually, strangely enough, Dr. Evelyn Hooker thanks Genjarelli personally in the study that she did that came out in 1957 that was published in Bruno Klopfer's journal for helping her with the statistical stuff. And I don't know if they hated West or just, Klopfer knew that he was had been sidelined, or what happened with that whole thing. But I do know that one of the funny things is that in the Mr. Right story that Bruno Klopfer tells, and he tells it in a way where he's quoting Philip West. There are quotation marks in the published version of that speech. And boy, does that quote, does the person that he's quoting sounds a lot like a psychologist trying to talk about cancer. One of the other funny things about Bruno Klopfer is that English is not his first language. So he has a very distinctive manner of speaking. One of the things he'll do is he'll say something like, so-and-so is a master of this thing, if you also consider this blah, 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 blah stuff. And then he'll go on with the rest of the sentence. And so he constantly has these sentences where he says a thing, qualifies it, and then goes on to say something else. And West doesn't write like that very often. And one of the things I noticed is that in the Mr. Right story, that person communicates like Bruno Klopfer. And one of the weird things about this book is that on the pages that have Philip West's name on them, boy, does it sound like Bruno Klopfer. To the point where, let me see if I can find a good example of it. This was the creepiest thing. And it was one of the things I really wanted to put in my video and then just didn't have time for because it was a little tinfoil hat too. I don't know if you can see that. So, do you see the pencil line right there? Let me see if I can find another page. Yeah, there's another section that somebody... So this book is one of two copies on the West Coast that I happened to find at my local university, and checked it out. And as I was looking through Philip West's reading his stuff, I kept noticing yo, this does not sound like Philip West talking here. It sounds like Bruno Klopfer. And then I noticed that somebody had taken pencil and written alongside and highlighted all those areas. And then when I got to Bruno Klopfer, that same person had written, this is where this came from, and just kind of big arrows and a lot of marks. I don't disagree with Pencil Guy. Whoever went through this, and this was last checked out in 1977. So whoever went through this book and highlighted all the areas that don't sound legitimately like Philip West and sound like they were inserted by somebody editing this book, at least there's two of us. There's two of us who think that that's what happened. And it was one of the weirdest things to open this book and read through there and be like, okay, so me and 1977 guy, I guess, agree that this does not sound right. And it was just one of those weird wrinkles that I kept running into in this whole investigation. But Bruno Klopfer sucks. Yeah, mysterious pencil person. Love that guy, lady. I have no idea. But they're spot on. And I can, if I can find, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I can show you where they wrote in Klopfer's section, where they were just I found where it came from. But Klopfer messes up other stuff too in the speech about the Mr. Right story. He can't do math. He I think he says 7 and 5 and 6 end up being 20. He says that a couple of the patients were women. No. He says that he looked at, I think, 25 or 30 of the patient records. I think he looked at 12 in the actual study. And there was one more study I wanted to talk about, which I thought was hilarious. So there was a study in, oh God, I actually want to pull this up. Out of Texas in, I think, 58 or 59, because Bruno Klopfer in his speech talks about being able to replicate this ability to look at a cancer patient's records and do a Rorschach test and tell you whether or not they're going to die quickly or not from cancer. And he said that he had been replicating this with like a 76% accuracy rate. He'd been replicating this at a university in Texas. And there's a cancer researcher out of Texas who basically was like, can I reproduce the study of psychological variables in human cancer? And so he did it. And did the same kind of study and sent all the records, the Rorschach records and stuff to Bruno Klopfer, and loudly thanks him on the front page. Thank you so much, Bruno Klopfer, for looking at these Rorschach tests and being willing to participate in this study with me. And then like the next line is, yeah, by the way, he's full of crap. He absolutely cannot tell the difference between these two things. And it was like such a polite academic hit job. You know, thanks so much for contributing. Oh, by the way, everyone, this guy doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. It cites Philip West and Blumberg and Ellis. I don't know if that was some sort of professional, just desserts for Philip West. I don't know if that cancer researcher ever knew Philip West or didn't appreciate the Mr. Right story. I'm not sure. I tried to tie that person in that study back to Dr. West and the story of Mr. Right. I just couldn't. It did come after. And it does look like a pretty, study, but it just kind of another odd wrinkle in this whole thing. So, anywho. If I do, to change the pace a little bit and the subject, if I do drawings, once I figure out how to do that through YouTube without breaking any rules, thanks, man. Hey, if you have an opinion on this real quick, what do you guys want? I was thinking, Mr. Paulson. And you'll donate. I don't even know what you have to donate, Mr. Paulson. But that's not how this works. Although I suppose, I appreciate that. We can talk later. There's a wonderful gentleman. So I've done a live stream one time on TikTok, and it went just so poorly. There's no test mode on TikTok, so I went live and was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And this nice guy showed up called Fearless Lion. No. Something Lion. And he's a chef who... So he said, because he was the only guy in there, he said, don't worry, man, they're on their way. They got stuck behind a train. And it was just such a sweet thing to say to somebody who just was like sitting there looking like an idiot with one viewer, that I thought he was one of my viewers too. And no, he just randomly clicked on the thing. But that guy and I started talking. And he's a chef who does spice mixes and sends them out. It's kind of the box thing online. And so he sent me, this was supposed to be for a 1,000 viewer thing. He sent me a package of those spices. And they're amazing. So one of the things I wanted to do was a gift card to his spice shop. I was thinking about 3 things. And I think the way that we'll do it is we'll probably do a live stream like this. Or actually, I think we'll do comments on the next video, draw it from there, and then pull the award on a live stream. And then it's just going to be first come, first serve. Because I think they're all going to be kind of equal value to somebody. I was thinking a book, the spice pack, and something else.
Are you done with the phone?
Yeah.
It's not on Wi-Fi, so I'm going to try.
And a shirt. I think we're going to have a logo shirt here soon. So if those sound good, we'll do that. And then I'll probably do a swap it run for the patrons as well. So time we got 11:20. as far as the stuff with Dr. West and the FBI, I can't find any indication that they ever went after him directly. But everything is redacted. The closest I could come to a smoking gun, assuming, to try to show that maybe Dr. West got kind of taken out by the Lavender Scare, was that he disappeared right about the time that the FBI got the back issues of One magazine and would have read his letter. And they knew of his involvement before that based on that Red Cross blood drive. Philip West shows up a few more times after 55, but it's most often in like the Mattachine Society's newsletter, talking about him still trying to do this research and still trying to get it published. I can't even figure out when he left UCLA. I didn't know that UCLA's medical school started in 51, I think, and had 15 faculty members. And I think he came on the year after, though he was working at UCLA before that. So he wasn't a founding faculty member of UCLA's medical school, but I think he was the next year. And nobody can tell me what happened to this guy, which also fits the pattern of what happened to Martha Dean. But there's no direct evidence, there's no smoking gun for what happened to Philip West. He never married, he never had kids. He moved his parents from Canada to LA in, I think, the late 40s. His mom died in 57. His dad died 2 years after he did. And I think it's probably from taking a bunch of x-rays without wearing lead protection that he got leukemia and died in 64. So what a crazy Canadian guy. Was at the nexus of all these things about, the birth of the placebo effect, the handoff between kind of snake oil salesmen and these people who just say, no, there's this powerful belief. Kerbiazin, except he wasn't, really a part of that. It was just kind of at the same time. And then the whole Dr. Hooker story. And one of the things I've noticed, I've been talking to academics nationally, including Lillian Faderman, who wrote The Gay Revolution. Like, she wrote the book on the gay liberation movement in the United States. She had not really heard of Philip West. And there's a few notes that I found where, trying to figure out how he found out about the Mattachine Society, it maybe was because of the study at Norwalk on sex psychopaths. But the way that the note is written is it's written in just enough ambiguity to not be able to tell whose idea that was. It could have been that the researchers at Norwalk had heard about the Mattachine Society and told West about it, but that's not how the note reads. He says, "I was discussing your group with them." Nabil, thank you so much, man. Person. I'll do this again. I want to get more into the habit, and part of this is going to be training viewers that they can do this, submitting questions on videos and then doing a live stream to talk about those questions and other things. So, I appreciate you showing up very much, though. So thanks for being a part of this, and we'll chat soon. But anyway, I don't know how Philip West learned about that, and I don't have any indication that he was a member of the Mattachine Society, but I can't prove that he wasn't either. So it got really frustrating. But it was intriguing to have national scholars kind of looking at this stuff with me, and being able to show them the primary sources that I'd found, and maybe adding a little bit of information to history that was there but had not been assimilated yet. And so it's because of y'all that I get to do stuff like that, and that's fascinating and amazing, and I really appreciate it. I think I'm all out of talking juice. Is there anything else that anyone else has in mind. If there's any of you left, I can't actually even see who's online. Three, two, one. All right, friends. Well, speak now or forever hold your peace. If you have any other questions or want to say something, let me know. Otherwise, I'll probably shut down the stream here in a second if I don't hear anything else in the chat. But I really appreciate everybody showing up who did, and everybody watching this if you're watching it later, because I'll probably edit it down and post it. So if you're watching this later and there are gaps in it, it's because there was no one here, no one was talking, or I done screwed something up on the technical side and didn't want to make you sit through that. So anyway, thank you, Cat Pal, for letting me know that. Bucket list of ideas. So, yes, bucket list makes it sound like I'm going to die, but I guess you never know. So, actually, do I share that thought? I don't know. I realized this morning as I was in the shower before this stream that it had been, so sorry, siblings, if you're watching this, but a year to the day since my sister called me and let me know that that my mom passed from COVID. So get your vaccines, people. Anyway, bucket list of stuff. It's maybe a good time to talk about this. I have ADHD. I have very severe ADHD. And I want to do a video about ADHD. It's one of the most impactful neurological disorders that can be out there. Some of the metrics on it are horrifying. And it's also just common enough that I think people have an understanding of it that's mostly wrong. And it shows up in pop culture enough to kind of be funny. And so it's also extremely treatable. But it is something that can really mess up your life. And so talking about that research, that impact, how it works, and what you can do about it is something that I've wanted to do for a long time. I do want to do a video on solar cycles because we're entering a more active phase of the sun coming up here, and also there's some stuff going on with Earth's magnetic field potentially that I have to do more research on this, but with a magnetic pole flip, from some of the stuff I was looking at, there might be a period where the magnetic field is weaker, which would make us more vulnerable to coronal mass ejections, solar flares. And so those two things combining with a more active sun and less protection could really be not great. Especially since, I don't know if you've read about the Carrington event at all. It was like back in the time of telegraphs. A massive coronal mass ejection that had like telegraph lines melting and arcing, and that would put us back, it would turn off every single piece of technology that exists. So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about ADHD, the plastics episode. Oh my God. Y'all, thank you for voting, people who voted, but also, goddamn, it's horrific. Yeah, well, and so climate change is really what I really want to do. It's kind of a glaring oversight at this point that I've talked about a lot of sensitive stuff, but I haven't talked about climate change. And one of the things that's difficult, if I'm going to go off on a tangent about this for a second. So one of the things that I noticed when I start to do research is that no one knows what the hell they're talking about, and it's really frustrating. Because you start to look up stuff like, even on sites like Vox or The Guardian, Scientific American, what happened was that the UN Climate Council thing that they do, they release a big climate report every several years. I can't remember what the interval is. There were climate models. And you really have to have two different groups talk to each other for climate change stuff. You have to have climatologists who tell you what will happen if you release X amount of CO2 or methane or whatever And then you have to have them talk to, that too. But I do want to talk about climate change. The climate impacts of. I mean, it would probably like lockdown reduce CO2 levels. So it's like, oh, good, nature's coming back. So if it sent us back to the Stone Age, it would definitely have a maybe positive impact on climate change. But as far as climate change is concerned, you have to have the climatologists, but you also have to have, call them social science modelers who are going to say, okay, what is humanity's energy needs, and how are they going to get it? And that informs how much greenhouse gases you're creating, which is then what you tell the climatologists who say, and now this is what happens, given that amount of greenhouse gas. And they didn't talk to each other for a while. I mean, they kind of did, but we had really outdated models. And so they were trying to create a more integrated model for this next upcoming climate report. And it took longer than they thought. So they kind of had this like hacked together version of it, which was more the climate side and not the modeling side, the energy generation and stuff. And then the next report was coming out and it still wasn't done. And the next report was coming out and it still wasn't done. So for years, we've been using this bad model with a lot of assumptions and oversight. And there's I think it's like RCP or RMA or whatever. It's like whatever that acronym is, 8. And that's the maximum amount of change that model predicted was like 8 watts per cubic meter or something of warming. And the problem, so that was the most severe, so that's the one that everybody reports on, uses this blah, 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 8. But some of the assumptions were like 6 times the use of coal that's being used now by 2050, and we're using less coal. So it's just not going to happen. But it was the most dramatic, so that's the one that all like the journalist sites use, and that's even if they tell you that which one they're basing, their visuals or whatever on at all. But it's a flawed model. So almost all of the stuff you read about climate change is based on this crap flawed model. They did finally get the integrated one. It's used in the most recent, like the 6th report from the UN, which is 1,500 pages long, and I haven't read it all yet. But anyway, so stuff like that is frustrating when you're talking about research, and that like even when you try to dig into the data, like so much of the stuff that you can even find to inform yourself about this stuff is just completely wrong. But that gives me a job, I guess. That's what a better question is trying to find that context and really dig through some of that information. With plastics, I'm doing the same thing. How much plastics have we created? Well, here's an EPA report. Well, where did the EPA get the data? Well, it got it from the American Plastics Council, which is an industry group that is the same people who make the plastic and invented recycling that doesn't really work. So, damn it. Then Europe had a report about how much plastic was created, and it said, yeah, no, it's this much, but also it ignores this kind and this kind, which are everything in fabric and all the styrofoam and things used in bottles. So, a lot of it. It's frustrating, but I would love to do a video on satellite hacking, which actually feeds into like satellite destruction and Kessler syndrome. That's the other one I want to finish up is the hacking one. It's funny, I kind of talked about ransomware, and then it was like a month before all those big ransomware attacks. I keep getting scooped talking about the Lavender Scare. Apparently, like 4 days before I released this video I've been working on for 2 months, CNN did a huge, giant report on the lab. Like, hey, here's this thing you've never heard of. Here's the Lavender Scare. I'm like, damn it. Can't remember which one I was doing one time where I got scooped by John Oliver. People have production teams. I don't. It's just me really trying to get answers and make it pretty so you don't hate watching it. But we'll get there. So at least I know some of my instincts are good. But security hacking of satellites would be great. I don't know anything about it, but I do know a lot of people in the security field that could weigh in on that. I also, with Dr. Cox, I'm probably going to do a short video on. He actually owns has a patent on 3D printing bones and regenerative medicine. So I might have him back on for a short episode about that. I love Climate Town. So, God, what is his name? I knew it. Anyway, I've talked to him a few times. His video on plastic and recycling is clutch. I'm hoping, actually, that he said he's excited to see the upcoming episode on plastic that I'm doing. I'm hoping that he'll promote it. So, hey, buddy, if you're watching this, please. But I can't say enough about him. He every time I've talked to him, he has been gracious, given me time. I like his delivery style. He's just a great dude. Yeah. Oh, God damn it. I'm going to look him up. I forget. I follow him on Twitter. I'm trying to learn how to use Twitter, and I'm not very good at it. But Raleigh Williams. Yeah. Not Brian Cox. No, I don't rate. Sorry. Dr. Cox is my friend Daniel. He's the one I did that interview with about the coronavirus vaccines. He's in grad school at Harvard and is a virologist and immunologist and has a couple of patents in regenerative medicine. Because Ollie is a more common name than Raleigh. But anyway, yes, his content, if you haven't seen Climate Town and seen any of Raleigh Williams stuff, by all means go, spend an hour looking at his videos. He's great. And I'm also hoping that he'll lend me some of his 170,000 subscribers when I get this plastics video done. And the plastics video is coming along. It's just so awful. I'm trying to figure out how to talk about it in a way that isn't just soul crushing. Because it's not that we are really screwing things up in like a future sense, like we have screwed some things up. No, I see the assumptions that some of you have made today in chat about me doing things on purpose and my ability to get Dr. Brian Cox on the show are just very kind. So I appreciate some of the assumptions that y'all make. Let's just say, someday. Somebody give me a viewer count. I think that's probably enough to be going on in terms of, I probably should finish the Confederate Monument video at some point. The reason I haven't gone back and looked at that is that I'm not going to say that we won, but so many positive things have happened and it was changing so quickly that it was hard to keep up with. I'm happy to say that, the General Lee Monument came down in Richmond. Even and that's huge. I think something like 600 of those 1,700 monuments are down. Thank you. And so I do want to. There's a great visual by Southern Poverty Law Center that now that I know how to do infographics a bit, I do want to animate that. Because one of the things that's interesting that you see on that visual is when those monuments were installed. And it was like right after, it wasn't Dred Scott. It was, there was one court case where that went against, Black Americans. And right after that, all the Confederate monuments were on courthouses. It basically was like, hey, just so you remember what the score is. And then Brown versus Board of Education, again, allowed segregation of schools. And right after that, all the Confederate monuments and naming things were schools. So it's very, you can just see the intent of those monuments to just be like, stay in your lane. And it so betrays the attitude and the intent and the disingenuous nature of groups like the Daughters of the Confederacy, who are like, well, we're just a historical group who likes to, preserve history. Yeah, bite me, Mildred. They're awful. And so I do want to expose some of that because those groups still exist and they still make it hard. That's the one. Thank you. Plessy versus Ferguson. Yeah, right after that, it's like Plessy versus Ferguson. All the courthouse monuments. Just let's make sure they know what the score is. What an awful group of people. And the more that we can talk about that history and deal with it would be great. I could talk about critical race theory a bit. I never intended this channel to be, Jonathan, the cisgendered white guy, talks about groups and experiences that he doesn't understand and hasn't had. But I have talked about some sensitive subjects, and critical race theory is something I read up on a little bit, and it's being used as a point of division in this country, in America. I know not all of you are from here, but the people's ignorance about it is being used to turn it into a talking point, and one of those things that kind of allows people to shore up their ideological identities to be mean to other people. So yeah, right, and that's the other reason I haven't really followed up on Confederate statues, is they've kind of fallen out. I try not to chase trends too much, obviously. I'm kind of playing YouTube on hard mode. Most people don't know what it is. Yeah, so screw it. Real quick, critical race theory is actually a doctrine taught in law schools, and I absolutely I agree, Cap-Al. And if I can do that, great. I try not to have it be like, this is how talking about this was for me, because I don't want it to be about me, unless I can be the Harry Potter, blank slate stand-in for the viewer. But the critical race theory is a way of talking about the legal framework in America, specifically, that that analyzes historical impulses and the way that we've structured our legal system, that to talk about and look at ways that legal system still marginalizes certain groups of people. And it absolutely does. But that's a law school graduate level, postgraduate, or doctorate level course and teaching curriculum. The version of it that we're talking about when we use the term critical race theory, that is being taught in very few schools or even being looked at, is kind of the one that's like, hey, so maybe we should talk about how awful historical times were in America for certain groups of people and how those effects still show up today. Overarching idea from critical race theory is that the idea of race was used, it is a social construct. It is not something that exists, and it has been used to divide people throughout history and still does. So when people talk about, I don't like critical race theory because I don't like teaching things that add divisions to people's lives or deepen the racial divisions in America. Yeah, well, CRT agrees with you. And that's kind of what it's trying to talk about. So anyway, we could talk about that. But are there any suggestions that anyone has, besides the satellite hacking was a great one? Any other ideas for videos? Or the Mr. Right story was really the first mystery that I got my teeth into. It felt one of the things I don't want to do, I don't like, I don't want to take a jab at Simon Whistler. You know, I don't want the site to be a top 10 or the channel to be a top 10 site, or I don't want to just read Wikipedia articles to y'all. And gosh, this channel would be a lot more successful more quickly if I did that, but it wouldn't be the content I want to make. I want to have the context of things. Why was I talking about that? I don't remember. But your suggestions are always wonderful. It does take me a little bit of time sometimes to get this stuff going. I'm excited to kind of get back into the groove, though, and get some throughput. So, I got to go change my little logo to right side up again because we're not doing Worst Questions episode anymore. Yeah, I've tried to, besides the Confederate Monument one, I did get some flack for being very America-focused. Not flack. I think other people around the world were like, yeah, enough about America, geez. But I'll bet you if I look into that, there's going to be some fascinating stuff, especially if we did a historical, like going back to the CCC, the Civilian Conservation Corps. I hate talking about economics because if any of you are economists, I'm sorry, kind of. I think economists are some of the most destructive professionals in academics because I don't think they know what they're talking about, and they like to talk about economics as if it's a hard science with like natural laws and things, and it's just it's like this guy's best guess, and then politics get attached to that. It's used to justify some terrible things. But I don't know enough about economics to really talk about like Keynesian economics or like stimulus packages and the economic benefits of, you know, funding roads and paying people to dig ditches and then fill them in. But you know, I could just do an expose on like, hey, stuff's broken. Yeah, design could work too, for sure. You know, European towns were built before cars. And so the way that European towns are built and designed versus towns in America, and how much ground we've given up to vehicles. For that matter, driver's ed was taught by GM for a long time, or affiliates of General Motors, and they indoctrinated a whole generation of kids in America to be like, stay off the roads are for cars, you need a car. It's just interesting. I don't know anything about the primacy of reason stuff. I don't know what you're talking about, which is a cool feeling. If you want, feel free to expand on that. If not, I will look it up. Oh, yeah. Okay. I kind of get the context of what you're talking about. Right. Rational actors in economics. Yeah, because, you know, rational is something that really describes people. I find that people are actually, I mean, this might be some hubris, but fairly simple. As long as you don't expect them to make a lot of sense, they start making a lot more sense. Friends, I cannot thank you enough for showing up. If anybody doesn't want to be, you know, I'm probably going to edit this up and then release it as a video. If you don't want your comment or name or whatever to be on that, feel free to say so, and I'll just blur you out. I figure you probably don't care. But figured I'd give you the option. I'm gonna go make some lunch for my wife, and we will get in the practice of doing this more often. I'll try to better announce them. I do have a camera coming that's actually not my friggin' cell phone. Yay, Black Friday. So the images will be better. They won't be as, you know, we'll get some more technical bells and whistles. I'll learn how to do this stuff soon. So I really thank you all for showing up to this, though, and I'll have it released as a video pretty soon. So anything Final thoughts from anybody? If not, I think I'm going to kill the stream in like 2 minutes. Back at you. Very much so. I hope to... I saw a couple of names that I recognized. I'm looking forward to recognizing some more next time. Surprisingly decent quality. I appreciate that. Oh, right. Yeah, I don't talk about much about my history, but like I was basically like... Refugees are refugees because of more horrible things, and I don't want to really use that term. But I showed up in the town that I live in right now, sleeping on the floor with what fit in my car. Didn't have a job. And then my phone exploded. So I went and got a new phone and happened to get a Galaxy Note 10 Plus, which I'm super thrilled that I did that. I'd never wanted to be like gear focused and be like, well, I can't start a YouTube channel unless I have a camera and a mic and a blah, blah, blah. But this camera allowed me to shoot like selfie facing in 1080p. And that really allowed me to start this thing. So it is my phone. Yeah. And I really, message retracted. Oh, okay. Was happy to be able to have that opportunity during the lockdown to start this channel, and I'm glad it's been well received, and I'm only here because of you all. So thank you so much for showing up, guys and ladies, and however you identify, and we'll chat soon. Now I got to do the awkward thing where I don't actually know how to shut this off. Maybe it's on here. I do not know how to make this live.